Welcome to the Tax Professionals Podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping you improve your tax career. Here's your host, Jack Bonehill.
What are the 3 most important skills to be a successful tax professional? Just think about that for a second. What comes to mind when you think about the most important skills to be a successful tax professional? The answer is inevitably going to depend on the person answering. I think you'll find this episode particularly interesting as you're going to hear the views of 4 different tax professionals with different backgrounds, experiences and current roles. The first is Bill Dodwell, Tax Director of the Office of Tax Simplification and Editor-Chief of Tax Advisor magazine. I'm a big advocate of the Office of Tax Simplification, and if you're unfamiliar with their work, I can suggest taking a look. The second is Ian Goodwin, Tax Director at Mazars, specialising in employment taxes, who provides a view very similar to my own. The third is Mark Morton, Head of Tax at Mercier Group. He provides entertaining and interesting talks, presentations and a different perspective on the most important skills. The fourth is Edmund Paul, Employment Tax Manager at Grant Thornton. A LinkedIn post he did a while back inspired this episode, so thanks for that, Edmund. Without further ado, let's kick off this episode with Bill's view first.
Hello, this is Bill Dodwell. I'm the Tax Director of the Office of Tax Simplification, and I'm also the Editor-in-Chief of Tax Advisor magazine, sharing 2 jobs for the sort of first time in my tax career. I started off reading law at university, which was a great opportunity, and then joined a firm called Arthur Anderson in the tax department and have spent my life in tax ever since. My last job in one of the major firms was Head of Tax Policy at Deloitte. And I'm going to talk about sort of 3 important things which I think matter for a tax advisor. The first is that combination of understanding law and combining it with an understanding of business implications, or indeed, where relevant, family implications too. How does the money work out? Because fundamentally, of course, tax is about money. It's about choices that many people can make. It's about compliance, which is really critical too. But you've got to take those legal concepts and turn them into something that's really practical. And that's, that combination is how the best tax advisors truly work, whether they are solicitors, barristers, chartered tax advisors, chartered accountants, other types of accountant as well. All of that is that combination of law. So do read law, do read tax cases, and do turn it into business implications and understand accounting more generally. The second big thing that really matters for a tax advisor is the ability to take the complicated and turn it into something that is easy to understand, something simple to follow. Because we work in an area that is really quite niche for a great many people, but nonetheless it's an area that affects a huge number of people. And we have to struggle with law, often worded in sort of arcane manner. We have to struggle with accounting standards, equally arcane at times it seems. And we have to take that combination and turn it into something that the decision maker, whether that's a client or whether it's somebody in business, that decision maker can follow. What are the implications of the choices available to them? What have they got to do? Where can they make those choices? And it's really important when we turn something complicated into something simple that we don't miss something out. Because if somebody's going to make an informed choice, they've got to understand sort of the missing issues as well. So maybe not absolutely everything is set out, but flagging, if you have particular different circumstances, you may need to think about them separately, is really, really important. And it's a most enjoyable thing, being able to take the substance of what we work in, day out, and turn it into something that enables a business to grow, to operate, whatever it turns out to be. That's a fantastic achievement and really something that works really well when it works well. Communication's really part of it. trying to relay stuff in all sorts of different forms, whether it's verbal, written, using diagrammatic forms, all of that really, really helpful and great fun in trying to take that thing that we work in and bring it alive for the relevant customer, let's say, for our advice. And the final area to talk about is change. We're obviously living in an era of particularly great change just at the moment that probably none of us could have envisaged a year ago. But tax law and the approach to taxation generally changes every single year, whether it's an accounting standard that's changing, whether it is policy changes coming through, administration changes, all of that. We really, really have to embrace change. And if we don't like change, then tax probably isn't the job for us. So embracing change, seeing it as a sort of core skill in managing it generally, is what the great tax advisor does. So for me, those are the sort of three concepts. Combine that sort of legal analysis with that business understanding, turning it into numbers and money that matters, turning the complicated into something simple to follow for those non-tax experts out there, and enjoying change. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Bill. All three of the skills mentioned there are extremely important in being a successful tax professional, and I'd probably go as far as saying that they're fundamental. But just on the one about understanding law and combining that with an understanding of business, that's something that I definitely didn't appreciate early on in my career. In like the first probably year or so, I was more interested in understanding the actual legal side of tax and obviously giving the correct answer, and kind of less concerned with giving something that was practical and useful to clients. But obviously the practical and useful side is what clients and customers pay for, and that's what helps us add value as tax advisors and professionals. So I can definitely recommend you take that on board if you haven't already. Next up, we have Ian Goodwin, who is Tax Director at Mazars, specialising in employment taxes.
The three most important skills for a tax professional are, in my opinion, 1, having a thirst for knowledge, being able to get to grips with the legislation, the technical details, and having an enthusiasm for them so that when you talk to people, they can clearly see you know the technical detail and you enjoy the work you are doing. 2, being able to clearly communicate ideas and solutions. Tax is complex, so where you can distill down that complexity so that people can navigate those ideas and those complex technical areas in a very simple manner, that will really help your clients and help your colleagues too, that so you can work collaboratively and come up with better solutions. And 3, placing your client first. Getting rid of your ego, getting rid of the tunnel vision that you may have had on certain solutions so that you can clearly help your clients depending on different contexts and different sectors and even different situations they might be in. I found that to be a really important skill so that you can be flexible and adaptable and help people navigate aspects as compliantly and successfully as possible.
Thanks for that, Ian. So you can probably start seeing a bit of a overlap between Bill's and Ian's views there, particularly with the clear communication one. Both of them have highlighted that as an important skill to have. But interestingly from Ian, he's also talked about putting aside your ego almost and not just having tunnel vision on a particular solution. I suppose it's just about remembering that we need to have our clients' best interests at heart rather than our own, and so trying to find the solution that's most beneficial for them rather than giving an off-the-shelf solution potentially. That's going to be super helpful for the client and they're going to appreciate that much more. Just before we move on to the next guest, if you're really keen on progressing your tax career, then you may be interested in my free course, which has been designed to help you accelerate your tax career progression at a pace set by you rather than by others. From the course, you will get an idea of which tax jobs will align with your career objectives and lifestyle goals. You will get an understanding of what you need to do to be able to achieve the job of your choosing. You will create your very own professional development plan to keep you focused and on track with your career goals. As I say, this is a free course and you can enroll on it by going to the show notes for this episode, which are at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP15. That's thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP15. Next up, we have Mark Morton, who is Head of Tax at Mercia Group.
Hello, my name is Mark Morton. I'm Head of Tax at Mercia Group, and I'm just doing a quick podcast today just to talk about, I suppose, the three main things that have stood me in good stead over the years as a tax professional. I think the first thing is the desire to learn. I think what I've learned over the years is I don't know it all. I always learn something every day, which is one of the things that actually interests and excites me in the world of tax. I think that has got more and more important over the years, and the way the revenue deliver information has changed a lot. Anybody who follows their web page like I do will know every day something appears on their website, and I think that ability and desire to continue to learn is one of the exciting things about the world of tax. So certainly I think that has its place. I think the second thing which has always interested me is client relationships. Every day is different. Every person I deal with is different. Their experiences, I learn off them as they learn off me. And so my relationship with clients, and of course at the end of the day, it's the clients that pay my salary, levels of professionalism, dealing with things on time, doing what you'll say you'll do. So client service is something that, for me, along with that desire to learn, has been something that I've enjoyed over the years and I think is highly important. And I think the third thing, as I've got older, is the ability to have a laugh and have a smile. Things can get very serious when you're talking about money, but I think a smile always helps, and the ability to smile at yourself, at other people, with other people, is always appreciated. So I think, having thought about it, they're the three main things which have stood me in good stead over the years, and hopefully you can pick something up from there and just enjoy it. Working life is a long time, and you've got to want to enjoy what you do and throw yourself into it. And much as it will sound boring, tax isn't boring. I've found it an exciting lifestyle over the years. It's led me into places where I never thought I'd go. What else can I say to you? Tax has been an eye-opener. So I hope you pick something out of that. This is Mark Morton signing off. Thanks very much.
Thanks for that, Mark. I think it's really refreshing to hear Mark say that enjoyment is going to be important in your career, making sure you're enjoying your job, having a smile, having a laugh. Because, as he mentioned, your career is going to span many years. So making sure that you're enjoying that and you're not burning yourself out to the ground is definitely going to be useful. And I do think it's going to be pretty difficult for you to have a successful career in tax if you're not enjoying the work. It takes up a long part of your day, a long part of your week, and a big part of your life. So making sure you enjoy it is going to go a long way. A similarity that cropped up then between Mark and Ian's views is having the desire to learn and the ability to learn new things quickly. As has been mentioned a few times already in this episode, tax changes a lot. The rules change, policy changes, the technology out there that we use changes. So you're always going to need to adapt, learn new things, take on board new information and be able to use that. So take note of that one. It's an absolutely crucial skill if you want to have a successful career in tax. Next up we have Edmund Paul, who is an employment tax manager at Grant Thornton. And he takes a little bit of a different approach by looking at skills needed to be a successful tax professional in the future.
The tax advisor of the future is a difficult thing to predict. However, in this segment, I will give my thoughts on the areas of focus one should have and how one can prepare for the changes that may come in future. The first area I'll look at is technology, and I'm pretty sure technology is one of those buzzwords that everyone is using. It is constantly evolving and a key feature in our lives. And our skills around technology is no longer a nice to have. We must be able, I think, to manipulate and analyze large quantities of data as a matter of course, with an ability to upskill ourselves quickly to work with new data and new technologies that come. I think in future years we will see greater capacity and capabilities of technology to consider tax rules and actually give advice. So we will have a greater role in analysing and reviewing the technology to make sure it's being done correctly. Also, with the rise of technology, there is an argument that advisors will be required to better demonstrate the value of their services to clients. The rise of technology has meant that previously cumbersome tasks are now far easier, and for a client to outsource some of their services, it may be the case that we need to change the approach that we take to doing some of the services that we provide. So take, for example, P11Ds. It may no longer be that the core of our service is preparing the returns. It may be a greater focus on the underlying data and reviewing that in greater detail. So in future years, it may be the case that we need to change and shift the focus of our attention to be more data reviewers than return preparers. The next thing worth looking at and considering is the abilities that a tax advisor has around tax technical. Now, tax technical is something that we should always have and always will and always have had. But there is an argument to be said that businesses are now building out their own internal functions and are enhancing their own internal tax capabilities, with a corresponding result that the level and technical challenge of queries is enhanced. Therefore, we have to move with those times as well and ensure that we're upskilling ourselves technically. In addition to that, there is also the argument that we need to be more aware of other taxes and what's happening, because the legislation that we have is also cross-referring to other parts in other taxes. So I look in my own area of specialism, employment taxes, and when something called the IR35 legislation was introduced, there were references in that to the Companies Act, which I'd previously never seen or looked at. Now, that is becoming a more prevalent feature in how legislation is drafted, with legislation more often than not cross-referring to other aspects. So we may need to dip our toe into other areas of tax in order to more fully understand our own. And finally, I will go on to soft skills. So soft skills are relationship building skills. And I think those are increasing in value and importance in our role. This is because previously there was a greater view of clients that they would try to minimize their tax liabilities, and there was a greater view that that was acceptable. However, attitudes have shifted over time, and there is a greater focus now on assurance. The argument is that it's easier to sell tax planning than it is tax assurance. Therefore, relationship skills are becoming increasingly vital to ensure that you are the advisor of choice when an issue and question arises. Relationship skills, I think, are quite difficult to grasp and actually really difficult to master. And I think one of your previous podcasts on how to build relationships really helped me on that point, Jack. So that is my overview of what I think are the key skills of a tax professional in future. And thank you very much, Jack, for letting me speak.
Thanks for that, Edmund, and always glad to hear that the podcast is helping people out, so thanks for that. Kind of in summary of the points that Edmund made then, I think it's mainly around being able to work with and evolve with technology so that we as tax professionals can still play a key role in providing advice and support to clients. The second one being technical knowledge, particularly with the aspect of needing to cross-refer between different taxes to understand new rules and legislation that's brought in. And the last one being relationship building. And I completely agree with Edmund's point that it is more easy to sell tax planning services than it is to sell tax compliance or assurance services. So building relationships with clients, I completely agree, is going to be key to be at the front of someone's mind when they're thinking about engaging with tax services. So that's all the views from the guests in this episode. And I thought it would just be helpful as well just to give kind of my own perspective on what I think are the three most important skills to be a successful tax professional. And really these fall into three areas in my mind, and that is technical ability, advisory skills, and relationship building skills. So just touching upon the first one, technical ability, what I mean by that is having good technical knowledge and also having the ability to analyse guidance and legislation to take on board new knowledge, particularly given that tax changes all the time and we always need to keep up to date. And being able to use those technical skills to really come up with new interpretations that will be useful for clients. Technical knowledge really is absolutely fundamental, I think, for any tax professional, and unless you're able to understand the rules and able to interpret them, then I just find it hard to imagine that you can correctly advise people, clients, customers, etc. So that'll be the first one. But of course, if you couldn't actually advise clients if you knew all the rules because you didn't have strong advisory skills, then it kind of wouldn't be worthwhile having all that technical knowledge because, well, you can't really make good use of it for other people. So the second one is definitely going to be advisory skills. And by that, it's kind of encompassing communication in lots of different forms. So that could be obviously verbal, face-to-face with clients. It could also be emails or reports. And being able to communicate in a way that is actually giving helpful, practical and useful advice to others, because that's where we really add value, is where we combine our technical ability with our ability to advise and give people that practical outcome that they really need and is going to be useful for them. And then, as has been mentioned a couple of times already in this episode as well, the third one is going to be those relationship building skills, because you could have the greatest technical ability in the world and you could be great at advising, but if no one wanted to work with you, then you wouldn't be able to help anyone. So that's obviously slightly extreme, but you can kind of get the gist that having relationships with people that's going to be your colleagues, clients, and anyone else within the industry is going to be key in kind of helping you to get out there and do your work as a tax professional. Whether that's an in-house role where you're going to need to build relationships with internal stakeholders, or whether that's being an external advisor where you've obviously got colleagues in different teams and you can all work together to support external clients. And obviously the clients will want to work with people that they have a better relationship with, particularly given that there's so much choice out there and from. In terms of advisors, relationships are really going to be that thing that differentiates someone choosing you over a different advisor. So those are the three most important skills, in my opinion, to be a successful tax advisor. And I think each one of them as a standalone skill isn't enough. They really do intermingle with each other and complement each other to make a person a successful tax professional, in my opinion. Just kind of in summary then of all the skills that are being mentioned in this episode across all the guests and me, The important skills seem to be having strong technical knowledge and ability, having strong advisory skills where you can put your technical ability and knowledge to use with an understanding of businesses so that you can be as helpful as possible to customers and other people with your tax advice. The skill of embracing change and having a desire to continually learn, given that there's so much change and evolution in tax rules and policy. Being able to communicate clearly and simply, particularly with complex tax rules, in a way that allows people to understand and do something useful with it. And also you want to be careful that you're not losing anything when you're trying to simplify some rules. That's going to be important. Relationship building skills, whether that's with clients, internal staff, etc. Being able to build and use those skills are going to be key from numerous perspectives. Being able to evolve with technology, particularly given that it's going to keep developing and getting better, and the way that we work with technology and are still able to add benefit as tax professionals is going to change. And as Mark Morton had put it, make sure that you are able to enjoy yourself in your career. It's going to be a long time that you're working in tax potentially, so you're going to want to make sure that you don't burn yourself out and that you're actually enjoying your work. So if you're able to develop and improve your skills in the areas that have been mentioned in this episode, you're going to be setting yourself up on a pretty good path and trajectory to having a successful career in tax. So just like to say a big thank you to all 4 of the guests in this episode who have taken time out to record their opinions on what are the 3 most important skills to be a successful tax professional, all in order to help you as a listener and other tax professionals to improve and develop your tax career. If you'd like to connect with any of the guests from this episode, then there will be links to each of their LinkedIn profiles in the show notes to this episode, which will be at thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP15. That's thetaxprofessionalspodcast.com/TTPP15. And on top of that, there's also going to be a link to my free course, which I mentioned earlier in this episode, that's being created with the sole intention of helping you to accelerate your tax career progression at a pace that's set by you rather than others. So why not go and take a look at that? I think you've got a lot to potentially gain from it and nothing to lose, as it is free after all. For those of you that are new to this podcast, the podcast is dedicated entirely to helping tax professionals like you to improve and develop your careers. A new episode is released every other Monday, and I'm always happy and grateful for suggestions from you of any topics that you would like covered. So if you do have any ideas, then please do feel free to get in touch either on LinkedIn or through the contact form on the website. But that's it for this episode. I hope you found the episode useful and have taken away some useful points that you can use to help improve and develop your tax career. Until next time.